Hi, I'm Rod Miller. I'd like to welcome you to my layout. This layout is 2-rail O-scale. The gauge of the rails is 1¼ inch, which is traditional O-scale. It's located in a building that I had custom built. I gave the architect the requirements that the internal dimensions were supposed to be 15 feet by 47 feet, which is the biggest building that could be fit on the space I had. And so this building was constructed and finished and ready for me about 35 years ago. I made good progress until I got to the point where I could run trains, and then things slowed down. Too much fun running trains. As I mentioned, the dimensions of the layout are 15 feet by 47 feet. I'll call it a shelf layout. The track is about 2 feet wide. That's the maximum width I use. There's one place where I had to narrow that a little bit, where there was a narrow aisleway. It's a 2-deck layout. The track schematic is it runs from one staging return loop to another staging return loop, and the loops are stacked. So there's a loop where the trains climb to the upper level or descend from the upper level to get to the loop from which they came. The construction was pretty much L-girder. So one of the issues I had with building the upper deck was how thick to make it. I initially planned for the height of the upper deck to be such that I could see the opposite rail on the main line. And so that forced me into a decision of compressing the viewing window between the upper deck and lower deck, and I didn't want to compress it too much, and the main thing I could change was the thickness of the upper deck. And so instead of the typical L-girder construction where the L-girders and the joists are on top of the girders, I turned the L-girders upside down and put the joists on the new top of the L-girders, and all the risers went in that space, and I usually saved about 2 inches of vertical height for the upper level. The first train we're going to run is a long freight. It is pulled by a Southern Pacific GS1 locomotive that I scratch built because none were available, and that's what I wanted. I love that classic look of the Southern Pacific locomotives, but none were available as an import, so I built one for myself. So the train is coming out of the upper staging loop. It will run around the upper deck, descend to the lower deck, and enter the lower staging loop, where it will turn around and come back out and retrace its route back to the upper staging loop. The radius on those curves is about 7 feet. But there are other places in the room, mainly the staging yards, where I had to do a lot of arithmetic to figure out what the biggest radius that I could get into there was, and include 4 tracks, which I wanted. And I ended up with a 60-inch radius on the track number 4 of the staging loops, and then the other 3 tracks are 56, 52, and 54 inches. Another issue with a 2-deck layout is getting from the upper deck to the lower deck. A lot of people use helixes. I didn't want to build one and thought I had the space to build a loop a la Tehachapi loop style, and indeed I did. And so the transition for the 2 decks is a single track loop that makes one 270-degree circle. And the radius on that loop is 60 inches, which is the restricting radius for the main line. All the turnouts are number 6, except for a few on the main line that can be run through at speed, and those are number 8. I grew up in eastern Nevada and watched the Nevada Northern when I was old enough to watch trains. And part of my experience as a kid was sitting trackside in Elko, Nevada, watching Southern Pacific and Western Pacific trains. Pretty much the design of the Southern Pacific locomotive became ingrained, and that's what I love. I love the way those locomotives look. So I thought, well, if I want to build a layout, how about an imaginary line between Wells, Nevada and Caliente, Nevada? And it used part of the Nevada Northern Main Line, so it passed through my hometown of Ely. And so the one interchange point on the layout is what I call Steptoe Flat, which is outside of the Nevada Northern yards. And there's a line that runs from those yards into East Ely for interchange with the Nevada Northern. And the other action that occurs in that area on Steptoe Flat is local freights will drop and pick up cars for distribution by other local freights. You'll notice the signals are changing. It's a simplified ABS system, but they're kind of fun to watch and they work really well. .4405 has traversed the entire layout from the upper loop to the lower return loop, and now it's emerging from the lower return loop to return back to the upper return loop. I've loved trains all of my life. I actually started when I was 5 weeks old. I got a Lionel train for a Christmas present. Of course, it was my dad's train to play with, which he did, and later on I started playing with it. And my dad actually had done quite a bit of experimenting with scale model trains, and he had built a Scale-Craft Santa Fe refrigerator car that was absolutely beautiful. And I remember looking at that car and comparing it to my Lionel refrigerator cars and thinking, gee, that one looks much better. And that's how I became addicted to scale model trains. I made the transition away from Lionel. The train will pass what I called Steptoe Junction previously. And you can see there's a yard there primarily for receiving inbound cars and dispatching outbound cars. And then we'll proceed around to the loop that takes it to the upper level. So it's going to stop on the main, and the passenger train, one of the few local passengers on the layout, will pass it on the passing siding. Once the passenger train is passed, our freight train will proceed into the upper level staging loop from which it originated initially way back when. When I started putting sound in my steam locomotives, I decided there was no way I was going to have that sound come out of the tender. And so I was determined to put the sound in the boiler. I had to do a lot of work sometimes to get the speaker to fit, but I did that. And I'm proud to say none of my steam locomotives have ever had a speaker in the tender. I'd like to point out that one of the fun things about model railroading is the social aspect. All of my friends, and they're very good friends, are model railroaders because we share that in common and we're very passionate about it, and it's important to us. So for me, there are a lot of pleasures and advantages in O-scale. The size is one advantage. You can see the spikes in the track. You can see all the detail in the cars. It's much easier to work on the equipment. And some of the fun parts are not the obvious things you think of. For instance, an O-scale passenger train going through a turnout at speed will go thump, 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 each wheel going through the frog. It's a really fun sound to hear. It's very realistic. One of the other things you can see with O-scale, pulling the slack out, coupler by coupler. Bang, 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 as it goes down the train. One of the things I really enjoy about model railroading is the people I've met and the friends I've made. We're all really very good friends. We share the hobby in common, and we're all passionate about it. And that's a great thing. When I started in O-scale, I realized that I was kind of a loner. There were people who modeled in O-scale, but from what I could find out, they were all on the East Coast. And I thought, well, wait a minute, maybe there are some O-scalers that moved out to the West Coast. A lot of people have. So I started a O-scale gathering called O-scale West. It's held in California annually, and it's been a roaring success. And it's been a great opportunity for West Coast O-scalers to come out and meet other people and enjoy the scale. It actually became so successful that people from the East Coast started coming to it. And I remember the very first O-scale West meet, and people came in, they wanted to see what I was doing to build a layout room. And they came in and walked in here, and the roof wasn't on, it had been raining, the floor was wet. And so that was an amazing start to what you see now. So one of the things I've enjoyed about showing this layout, and one of the things that people really like to see, is how I did things. How do things get done? Because new model railroaders may not know about track laying techniques or benchwork techniques and so forth, and they could come in and see the layout as construction progressed and see what I was doing and take ideas away from that and hopefully use those to build their own layouts. That's been ongoing for 35 years. It's been a great time. I've really enjoyed making this video, and I really hope that you enjoy watching it as much as I enjoyed making it. Thank you for watching.